in the time after King Arthur. A poem in stone. Our story. We are back almost. A year has passed since the meeting of Percival and Darrell. Sorry, but there are not any chronicles for that year. We do know that they were married in Camelot and lived happily. She returned once to Iceland and, as promised, returned to Britain for the next 6 months. It is summertime now. The plague is quieting down in most parts of Europe, although not gone yet. But here life goes on as it must. Britain grows stronger each day. Many squires have distinguished themselves and now stand before their king. Knighthood. Knighthood is never granted hastily, but many men were more than ready now, having proved themselves during the preceding years. These men, Percival knew, would form the nucleus of the force which would eventually be called upon to thwart the sad future that would otherwise come to pass after several more years. Camelot, that poem built in stone, called many to its service and to that of the world's good causes. Many rose up through the ranks, although some did not, but all dedicated their lives to the causes of righteousness. The ranks were as follows: novice, page, common foot soldier, common squire, pikeman, archer or grappler, knight, squire, knight of the Round Table, senior knight of the Round Table. Now it is Bogar's turn and then Hargrave's to kneel and be dubbed a knight by a light touch of the crimson spear, as King Percival steps forward.
In the name of God, King Arthur, St. Michael, and St. George, I make you a knight, Bogar, and give you the right to bear arms and the power to meet justice. Now rise, Bogar, knight and protector of the empire. My king, it is a duty that I will solemnly obey. Now, Bogar, kneel and prepare to rise again.
Bogar is perplexed at the king's strange request, but kneels again. There's another touch of the crimson spear, this time on the other shoulder.
Now rise, Sir Bogar, knight of the Round Table and defender of heaven.
And now Hargrave steps forward. Darkness falls. Our story Europe has not been entered for 7 years. The plague has been absent for a year. If it does not return this season, it will be assumed to have run its course. Britain welcomes Angles, Jutes, and all who come in peace to its shores. There is a new feeling of confidence, for Britain is herself once more free yet powerful, alluring but commanding, and beautiful beyond belief in mind, country, and spirit. Sadly, Taliesin left years ago and never returned. And from Europe come only these ominous forewarnings. The Goths grow strong in the west and the south. To the east, Mohammed incites followers to spread Islam by force. And to the north and east, barbaric hordes are contained only by the Rhine and Danube and stretch all the way back to China's Great Wall. And the Turks are restless as usual. Evening for a classic lady. Once before, the Visigoths had nearly conquered Europe by pretending to come to the aid of the falling Western Roman Empire, and were only stopped by the brave deeds of King Arthur and his knights. Now, only isolated fragments of Arthur's once great empire remain, and, thanks to the plague's effects, quickly crumble, and the Visigoth, not as severely affected by the plague, gains from sickness what he could not win in war. For now, Western Europe is his. Again, the flow of goods from Europe is cut off, and the Goth interferes with trade between Britain and her allies. Now every day that passes will see the Goths grow stronger from Europe's riches, while all others grow weaker. But the time for Allied action is not yet ripe. There is much preparation to be done, for a world war is no idle venture.
Winter is at its height, our supply lines would freeze, and the contagion may yet lurk in hidden recesses. In the spring we shall know for sure. And finally the Goth is strong and unified now. Attack now is not wise. Better to wait until he grows fat and lazy with his newfound wealth.
It is we, Britain's Saxons, who shall fight the fiercest for Saxony, our fatherland.
But sadly, Percival knew, as he had been alerted by Taliesin, that soon the whole world would be aflame with hate, and that only careful, cunning, and crafty planning, not rash action, would bring the world's hopes home to stay. As winter eases, a Grecian treasure ship sails into Camelot, laden with the pride of Greece, its classic literature. The looks on the faces of the ship's crew tell Percival what he already knows, that Greece, that lady of classic splendor, has fallen to the Moslems. And that Constantinople, also called New Rome and the jewel of Christendom, unconquerable for centuries, now stands alone against an onslaught of Islamic madmen, driven to war feats beyond comprehension by whirling dervishes and Muhammad's ceaseless preaching. Blackness arrives. Percival orders the precious Grecian literature onward to Ireland, for even Britain may not be safe for long, and thence to Iceland if need be. The Grecian ship's captain reports about the war that those sailors which survived have fled to the Mystical Isles, while the remaining soldiers flock to Constantinople, vowing to defend her to the last.
It is true that if Constantinople were to fall, then the Eastern Roman Empire would be forever lost, but the city cannot be conquered now, and can withstand a siege of a year or two before its only possible conqueror, starvation, can take it. And believe me, we will not then let that happen, but better now that she draw the Moslem like a magnet to his slaughter, thus diverting his attention from other weaker regions.
Yet by twos and threes, so as to not attract attention, British warships are sent to that great inland sea, the Mediterranean. For this is where the war must begin if the great plan of cleaving enemies apart, those known and those as yet unknown, is to be accomplished by distant and separate invasions. A fast ship now bears into Camelot's harbor, carrying another dreaded messenger. Dreaded because they always bring bad news of late, the news. The Hun has crossed the Rhine to take unfair advantage of Europe's plight. The Vandal marches to sack Rome and mark its final fall. The Turk retakes Jerusalem, and the Visigoth pushes the Franks to the sea in Gaul, and the Franks ask for your evacuation aid. Clovis II, King of Gaul, facing certain defeat, does what he must do and calls a retreat to allow the finest of the Frankish troops to seek refuge across the Channel, so they might live to fight another day when the odds are better. Percival immediately dispatches every available ship to the shores of Gaul, in one of the largest successful evacuations of an army that the world has known. And it succeeds because Clovis II will not leave his beloved land, and entices the Goth with the bait of his ready capture as he draws inland with a few brave men, and so diverts his pursuers away from the fast-retreating Frankish army. The French soil that he loved so much now surrounds Clovis II in eternal and everlasting comfort, in an unmarked grave where a few dedicated followers buried him while the 12 Goths that he took with him rot in the fields abandoned in death, but where, oh where, is young Clovis III. A defeated, but mostly intact army arrives safely in Britain, and it is then declared that if and when Europe is invaded, that Frankish shock troops shall lead the way home to retake all of French soil, or join Clovis II beneath it. Our continuing story. The time for invasion is not yet at hand. However, equipment arrives daily in Britain from free foreign shores. Blacksmiths work day and night. Early and second plantings continue in the fields. Spring freshens the air. Regiments are formed and trained. Frankish troops grow healthy once again. King Percival can only hope that all will be in readiness by the time that the geese fly south and the leaves begin to fall.